So, hello everybody. How you doing? Welcome to Whining On. First of all, I'd just like to say, everyone, welcome to AJ's interview. He'll be on in a few seconds. If you're just joining us for the first time, please on Facebook join the Whining On with Public Performance group. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. You'll get more updates about what's going on. For now, let's introduce AJ.
How are you?
Hello.
Tonight?
How you doing? Right, let's get ourselves into prime positions. I'm not bad tonight, brother. How you doing yourself? You good?
I'm very fine this evening, although my evening meal has not yet arrived, so I might get hangry halfway through the interview. I've brought some beverages for calories, so
Excellent.
we'll see.
You need a few calories to keep it going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Rex Boyd says hello straight away. Got a few old friends saying hi.
How come I can't see people saying hi? Is that you only get to see that?
I can tell you if people say hi through it. We've got 5 people on already. You said no one was going to watch your interview. Oh, you pressed a cherry.
You should have it so that the guest can see who says hi.
Unfortunately, I don't write code or design the app I use to broadcast this.
Okay, well, who's watching? Tell me who's watching.
So I can't tell you all the people who are watching. People who are just joining now. If you want to say hi in the chat, then I'll have a better idea of who's watching. I tell you, we've got 6 people online in the first minute. We got Rex Boyd has also said, "Go AJ." You know. Yeah, so AJ, I'll give you just a brief introduction. When I first saw you on pitch, you were young, powerful, dynamic, capable performer. You seem to own the space. I want to know
why are you speaking in the past tense?
You are still capable and powerful, but as a young person, you know, other performers have a godly appearance before you sort of learn the field yourself. You know, you understand the craft a little bit better, and then you're just, you know, the same as everybody else.
Yeah. So you see him die on the raft. So you see him die on the raft in a dozen different small towns in England on a wet Wednesday.
Exactly that. Me and AJ have done many a time of jumping in a car and going to some provincial market town to do some shows. So I feel like we've done our brief little chit chat, the warm up. Let's get into your story. Performing life, not for everybody. Why did AJ become a performer?
Okay, well, my first performance, my first public performance, I was 8 years old, and it was the 1983, the opening of the Albert Docks in Liverpool, and my dad had organised a water skiing display, and I was a water skier, and it was really challenging actually to ski in the Albert Dock because the wake of the boat reverberated against the walls of the dock and came back to it and just created like just really choppy shit. But
you're getting multiple washes.
Yeah, but I stayed on my skis and waved to the crowds, and that was my first hit. And there's a bit of a link there to street performing. There was a street performer who had their first professional gig. He was street performing professional gig, aged 18. I think he was playing drums.
1983.
83, and 10 years later, we met on pitch and became good friends. And he was kind of big influence, big mentor in my life. And you've interviewed him,
Dave Southern.
And yes,
yeah, there you go.
How did you know that?
Well, he drums right now. You know, he's a big influence on you. The father of the street scene in the UK.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So So that was my first public performance, and then I became a martial artist, and then I became a gymnast.
Just before we go on to this stuff, so your father organised displays. So was he more of a water skier or was he a promoter?
No. He was a hobby skier, and like me, a sort of opportunist sort of promoter. I mean, he used to manage bands when he was in his teens.
So you were introduced to a lot of culture when you were young?
Maybe a little, yeah, kind of, yeah. But he was he was he was water skiing, and he heard that they were opening this thing, and he said, well, do you want a water ski display? And he got the best skiers from the club. There was loads better than me. There was, really good. There was a guy who could do a headstand on a sort of wakeboard. Wakeboards hadn't been invented. It was like a disc, and he did a headstand around it with those choppy waves. Well,
wow.
And then I was just a little cute kid that could ski, and
push a kid out of the stage kind of thing.
No, I didn't need any pushing.
So you were always somebody who wanted to be in attention as a young person.
Yeah, I was walking around the playground on my hands, self-taught before doing any gym lessons. I taught myself to walk on my hands, and yeah. And
so when you say you got into martial arts and gymnastics, there you go. So when you say you got into gymnastics and martial arts, did you do that at kind of the verging of teenhood? Was that when you were in high school and you were looking for things to get into?
No, my mum used to take me to anything that was going, trampolining, wrestling. I started off wrestling after school club, trampolining after school club. I had music lessons, basically anything to keep me occupied.
Just to keep you from being in the house.
Yeah. And climbing up the walls. At 5 years old, one of my earliest memories was being in a Spider-Man costume and climbing up the drain pipe of the house, getting to the sort of top floor and falling down onto my arse. Really fucking hurt.
I bet they had many a sleepless night from young age, then.
Yeah. In fact, actually, 3 years old, I sort of remember this. I was on one of those pedal tractors that toddlers have, and my mum was visiting a friend, so it wasn't even her house, and she had a back garden, but it was sloping upwards, and I pedaled to the top and then freewheeled back down right through the patio glass window, and had stitches in my head, on my crown there, just at 3 years old, lots of blood, lots of stitches. So
they're sending you to insured places, basically.
Yeah, early start to stuntman career.
Yeah. And so when you get into gymnastics, and I focus, maybe, I don't know whether it's better to focus on martial arts or gymnastics is something which is an influence driving you to your later performance career. Maybe we talk about both. When you're getting into them, are you driven? Are you like, when I speak to a lot of people on here, they say that they're very focused, and that training and that kind of process of acquiring skill, ability, and fitness and physical awareness at that age was something which formed them in their later performing career.
Yeah, I think the physical things like gym and martial arts was a happy balance between my drive and a good tutor, a good sensei. I watched Jackie Chan movies, or wanted to emulate stuntmen that I'd seen in movies, but I wouldn't have been driven if I hadn't had a good sensei and good instructors. I would have just gone, this is bollocks, I'm not doing this, and moved on.
Yeah, and so you put it down to the guidance you had at that time. Did you have much success at that time?
Yeah, I won a couple of regional judo championships. Yeah, I remember my mum turning into this ferocious soccer mum, but martial arts, combat mum. Kill him! I was 8. but to be fair, I got to the sort of heats. There was kids a bit smaller than me. Then the semis, they were the same height as me, and then the final, this guy was like a brown belt. I was like an orange belt, and he was really much taller. So my mum was like, "Oh God!" But as soon as I got him down, she was going, "Yeah, go on, get him!" And she was cheering louder than any.
So it was like a computer game.
Dojo.
You had your final boss. Well, because the opponents get bigger and bigger and more powerful as you go up.
No, you millennial. Computer games, real life came first. The computer games were based on real life. This is your generation speaking here. Yeah, no. Yeah.
Fair enough. And so you did that all the way through your school years, right?
Mm-hmm. And then got into gymnastics about 12. Basically, my parents like got divorced, so we didn't have a boat anymore, and we couldn't water ski. So I took up martial arts. No, I think I was doing martial arts at the same time. Yeah, my parents were still together. Yeah. And then at 11, there was no water skiing. Yeah, I took water skiing really seriously, and then we couldn't afford that. And so I took up gymnastics, and again, very lucky to like the first club I went to. I stuck with them for like 6 years, and I got into display gymnastics. I could have done competition. I did a little bit of competition. The only proper gym competition I entered, I came 48th, like in like a region, and but into club competitions, I was like in the top 3. Like,
yeah, and so you have to think that out of all those gymnasts now who spent a lifetime using the skills they had, which is something you did that I don't think many of those people would have done.
Yeah, I can still do a backflip at 45. Right, yeah.
Well, you do it and you earn money from doing it. It's your vocation, has that integrated into it.
Yeah, but what I was going to say was that there was this club. I was really lucky that I went to this club, and it was a competition club, but they had a display team. The same coach had a display team that trained somewhere else on a different night. And after about a year or something, I think, maybe 2 years, he said, "Oh, do you want to come try out the display?" And no, that's it. We did a joint fundraising display with the artistic gym club and the display team. And I was a natural. He saw that I was a natural. I loved showing off, loved the crowd, loved working the crowd, wasn't nervous. In fact, the opposite. The crowd made me, better. So he put me in the display team, and then that was it. And then I was like hooked on the applause.
And so that's the beginning of you really starting to understand your appreciation of being a showman.
Yeah.
Okay, and so when you go from there, how do you take that then and apply it to doing shows in entertainment? Because that's it's entertainment, but it's more of a athletical exhibition. So how do we move from that?
I was really clumsily, I did drama as well at school. So I was in a few school plays, and I went to a Saturday drama club, not for very long, because when I got to the standard of gymnastics where they wanted me to train on a Saturday as well for the county squad, I had to give up. I had to choose drama or gym, and I just chose gym because I was already training a few times a week, and the young actors in that particular drama club were already child TV stars. So I just sort of thought,
it seemed like the most viable route for you.
But when I was 18 and I joined the circus, then they started introducing me back to drama, and I'd definitely been a sort of a sports performer, and it was very clumsy.
But that's quite a jump. I mean, why join the circus? What was the progress of events to lead you to go into the circus?
Me and my friend were doing some fundraising for a trip away, a gymnastics trip away, and we somehow ended up going to London, age 16, and trying the same things we'd tried in our town, which was one of us would do a handstand, the other would have a sort of clipboard and a list of sponsors, and we'd one person would walk on our hands and then approach the public and go hi, and we'd be in our Great Britain tracksuits and go, "Hi, we're fundraising for our next sporting event. Can you sponsor us £1? We're doing a sponsored hand walk." And so we ended up doing that, getting a train down to London, doing that in Hyde Park. Ended up in Covent Garden and seeing Andy Sinclair do a show on the North Hall on a wet Tuesday in the middle of the day to a load of French school kids, and he was grumpy. I remember it being grumpy. But
so is this like 87 or 88 now?
No, 91.
This is 91, okay.
91, age 16. And we were like, I just interrogated him. I was like, "What's this all about that you're doing?" Like, and he was actually okay. You know, spoke to us. You know, quite informative, and then we just started sort of fly pitching on James Street. We could do some badass moves. We were like 16, so I could pop Richard on my shoulders. He could backflip off my shoulders. I could pitch back into doing twists, and we could do that all day, like these young breakdancers we see now in polluting our street.
And that's the same day, right?
Yeah. We were only like one day in London. We got the train. You know, we were 16, train there, train back from Nottingham. It's like 1.5 hours train.
Yeah. And did you make any money?
So, yeah, we made loads. £23 each,
wow.
I think, that day.
And for an 18-year-old, 16-year-old, that's a lot of money.
That was in total from like £9 in St James's Park doing a sponsored hand walk, and then the rest in Covent Garden doing the tricks, then the hat. You know, that was like And then we went back to Nottingham, and there was a juggling shop that we'd never noticed. So we went in the juggling shop. This was a whole new world. And the guy taught us to juggle. And I practiced at home with oranges or like socks. And this guy in the juggling shop went, those Covent Garden performers, they make like hundreds of pounds in a day, you know. So we were like 16. So we just started learning tricks that would be good street shows. And then at 18, in that same shop, there was a poster advertising for acrobats and dancers. I was also we were both doing dance as well, a couple of nights a week. And it's an acrobat dancer. So I phoned them up, so can I have an audition? And it was in the northeast. They said, yeah. So I got the train up to Middlesbrough, and I arrived late. And they said, oh, you've got to, the studio we booked out isn't, we'll interview you, but we can't give you the physical audition. So we sat down in a cafe and it interviewed me. And they were like, yeah, well, it's kind of a waste of time because we can't really see your moves because the studios, we hide it for this time and you were late. So, and they didn't want to hire me because it was an all-women circus. And I just, on the phone, I said, well, you can't not interview me because of my gender. This was like 93, you know. And they went, yeah, good point. But they just were going through the motions. And then they got to the point where you've got to go home now, like, because we can't audition you. And I went, yeah, you can. Just come out into the car park. Watch this. I did like front somersault, walk out, flip, whip, flip, twist. And they were like, you're hired.
Oh, wow. So they were impressed.
So that was the start of my career.
And did you see yourself at that point as a street performer? Did you see street performing as a potential future for you? No?
No, because I thought I had to learn how to juggle and stuff for some reason. And then I was at Glastonbury with the circus, and I saw a double act called Skate Naked, Pete and Paul. And they were doing backflips and breathing fire, back somersaults whilst fire breathing and setting fire to their hair. And they weren't gentlemen jugglers. I could do that. I was like, yeah, I could be the crazy guy doing backflips and sort of one-liners. I didn't have to learn mime or juggling or wear a suit or, you know, but so I saw Skate Naked and that was it. I was just like, yeah, I reckon that's me. I'm going to leave the circus. And
well, maybe before we get to that point, let's draw back on the experience you had in the circus. So when you first joined the circus, your first day in the circus, what was it like?
Cold and hard. They were, they made me clean a whole truck, massive truck, and paint it, sand it down, paint it. And yeah, we did like just loads of maintenance for weeks before we did rehearsals. Then we did rehearsals. And then the first show was, and like the rehearsals were so clunky because I didn't have the sort of required drama. They'd all done circus school, physical theatre courses, clowning courses. And I was just like, just point me in a direction where I can backflip across the stage. But as the course of the season on, and I got involved in more and more scenes, and got more confident with my drama. And yeah, we went to Glastonbury that year. That was really a game changer. That was just so eye-opening. I think it was like taking acid, but I hadn't taken acid by that point. But that was the exact same thing, just mind blown.
So when you performed and you were pointed in a direction to do flips, did it work? Did the shows work? Did you enjoy the performative side to it, aside from the rehearsals, which you say you found a bit difficult because you didn't have the physical theatre and experience? You know, you're a greenhorn there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we had a daytime and a nighttime show. The nighttime show was musical circus theatre, Circus 5 theatre, and it had a narrative, and it was, you know, a bit serious. And then we had a daytime show that was more like a street show with sort of 8 members of the circus. They were all sort of street show routines. There was a sort of club juggling routine. I couldn't juggle at that stage, but there was a club juggling routine, knocking the kazoo out of, well, I don't think we used volunteer, but and there was this bit where they didn't have a crowd, and I just got on the microphone before the show and started talking, and I just remembered the Covent Garden lines, and it was a lot easier to gather a crowd with a massive trapeze rig and 2 trucks and a whole set and behind you. So, and I just sort of built the crowd, improvising, ad-libbing, sort of walk-by jokes and sort of, yeah.
And so that was better than doing the musical stuff where it's all set and everything's choreographed strictly.
Yeah.
And so what circus was it? I can't remember if you mentioned the name of the circus.
Chimera Trapeze and Fire Theatre, legendary Lynn, Claire Anderson.
Okay. And you're there for 5 months, 6 months?
And I'm still good friends with both them.
Yeah.
6 months, and then I was age 18, had a season in circus. It was late September, and I went back to my bar job, and what else was I doing? Oh yeah, selling double glazing. So I went back to double glaze, but I was also going to Chester on Saturdays. That's where I met Dave, and doing street shows on a Saturday, getting a train back to Nottingham, doing my nighttime bar shift, and then knocking on doors in the cold midweek in Nottingham. And I was staying with some weirdo that I didn't like, and I saw like a TV program with Barcelona High Street just incidentally in it, and it just showed street performers on the Ramblers. I was like, I'm going to just go to Barcelona. So I bought a one-way ticket for 50 quid, and that's like all I had. I think I had 100 quid, but I bought a one-way ticket for 50 quid and had the other 50 quid. Got there, and again, another Dave Sudden connection, but I just got to Barcelona, found this youth hostel thing, and there was a set of juggling. There was a bag hanging up in the dormitory with a set of juggling clubs. So I was like, aye, this is promising. And there's a very dear friend of mine I'm still friends with called Stu Thomas, who Dave Sudden had taught him to juggle.
Wow.
So I got chatting to him, and then we ended up doing sort of double acts, but he was only there for a week and he went back, and then
but that must have been quite helpful for you, because that kind of gave you a hand to hold almost when you were starting to do shows in Barcelona.
Absolutely. So we went out together, and then I went on my own, and then met other English people, and just joined a whole community, and ended up in Spain for 6 months. Ended up touring Spain with, and meeting my double act partner Gordon, Max Normal, and I just jumped in his truck and we drove down south, and we met a load of other crazy.
So just before we jump to Max Normal, Gordon, right? Just before we pick up the story from there, let's just drag back a tiny bit and just talk about the show a tad. So when you're doing the shows in Chester, what kind of stuff are you doing?
Right, yeah. So my first ever street show, the idea was Diablo I could do. I couldn't really juggle clubs. I could juggle balls, but I couldn't juggle clubs. But I could do Diablo, and I could do a high throw and a catch. So I learned to do a high throw, back somersault, catch. And that was my opening trick. And then my finale trick was to find something high and do a front somersault off it, and had a bucket of water, and I stripped down to Speedos and put a bathing cap on as well, and goggles. Maybe not the bathing cap. Maybe it was just the goggles. Yeah, it's just the goggles. Yeah, because my hair got wet. And somersaulted off something high, landed on my feet, dived into the bucket of water, sort of did a headstand, kicked my legs around, and then stood up. And I think this is all Dave Southern's idea. And then the water poured all over me, and then I hatted with the bucket. Yeah. So I didn't do that in Barcelona. It was
this is the next question. Just before we go to that, when you're doing the show in Chester, is it a lot of jokes? Is a lot of talking to build up and to warm into all these pieces?
Yeah, but very, very clunky, sort of, not very good talking.
Well, you were beginning,
so I would just do. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't afraid of the crowd, but it was just, I didn't see myself. I just saw myself as presenting stunts.
Yeah.
And the only lines I had were stock or stolen.
Fair enough. So you take that, then you go to Barcelona, and you say you didn't do that in Barcelona, and it's part of that. I was going to say is part of it because of the language, but maybe also as well as a cultural difference. The swimming cap and the jump is something which see.
I'm missing a fundamental part of that.
Okay.
So I went to Edinburgh Festival. So Dave Southern gave me, I said, I'm thinking of going to Edinburgh. This is before Barcelona. And he said, here's £3. Find a guy called Pepe, buy him a beer, and your life you'll be sorted. So and you don't remember Pepe in his prime, but he was in his.
Well, it's not that. I was born in '84, so I think by the time he was out of his prime was the time I was 18.
Yeah. So I just turn up at the Mound, and it's the Mound. It's like huge acts, and I was a chump, and but I went up to Pepe and said, a guy called Dave gave me £3 to buy you a pint. He goes, come on then, let's go to the pub. I went to the pub, and my props were locked in the locker at the railway station. And he said, are you going to play? And I was like, no, I'm just here to watch, take notes, And he goes, well, there's no point in being here if you don't play. So go get your props and go and have a play. He gave me the permission to sort of go into the jungle and just try my luck. And when I got up I was a chump, but when I got up on the high, it was the toilets at the bottom of the Mound that I stood on.
So I don't know if those toilets are still there. Can you describe where it is?
Yeah, disabled toilets. But it's like, at the end of Princess Street Gardens, there's this, like a sandy-coloured stone that used to be disabled toilets. I don't know this. Yeah, they are. But when I was up high on there in my Speedos, about to somersault off, people who were watching other shows turned around and saw what was going on. So I made a bit of an impact. And I watched shitloads of shows. And I did very few, but I watched a lot. And what
did you take away from that then, watching all these shows? It seems like by the sounds of it, it had an effect on you.
Yeah. So when I got to Barcelona,
just before you get to Barcelona, when you're in Edinburgh, you're watching these shows. What's the experience like watching you? I assume you've never seen such a variety of shows.
It felt like I was kind of meant to be there as soon as I was playing, like as soon as I was performing and taking a hat, And I remember made sometimes I made 50 quid hats, you know, and I'd made 10 quid hats in Chester. So making 50 quid hats, and sometimes I did 2 or 3 shows a day. So that was my, like, more than my weekly circus wage. So that was the, right, I'm a street performer.
And what did it strike you watching the shows? What did it inform you about street performance?
Well, you know, I was just like a kid in a candy shop. I was, you know, I loved watching all the shows. I was a big street show fan. I would sit cross-legged in the front row of all these shows. The Samande Jugglers, the Uncles, Pepe. Can't remember if Living Space was there that year. Mighty Gareth was there. He had long hair. It was before he got his red stripes. Damien Daredevil was there. I'm pretty sure that. Yeah, Rex Boyd. Yeah, and I went out and watched loads of stand-up comedy as well. I was just an 18-year-old kid just at a festival, and yeah. And
when you left there and you went to Barcelona. Sorry, carry on. Finish your point.
Yeah, so when I went to Barcelona, then I dropped what I was doing, but I had all these influences from Edinburgh, and then this new playground, a new context to, well, I couldn't speak the language, so I started doing a mime show, completely mime, just with a whistle. So,
and there must have been some influence from Pepe there, because I know Pepe was he was a mime artist, and he used a whistle in his work, and so maybe some influence driven from that.
Absolutely.
The possibilities were shown.
Yeah, so exactly. So Spanish audiences they're a lot better than English audiences in terms of they'll just watch what you do. You don't have to lead them somewhere or hold them there. They'll just like, what's this guy doing? So my show was a lot more, I don't know, theatrical, or you could go from scene to scene. You didn't have to do the English one trick show. So I had lots of things. It was mainly tumbling, somersaulting over. That's when, I changed the finale to, I realized that I couldn't be restricted to finding something to jump off. In Chester, there was something to jump off. In Edinburgh, there was something to jump off. But I wanted to work pitches where there was nothing to jump off. So I got a girl out of the audience, and I would count to 3. She would take a bow. I would do a front somersault over her. And then 2 girls, then 3, then 4. And then got older, and then 3, then 2, then 1, then on a chair.
So when you're in Barcelona, does the show progress and develop? It sounds like it does. It sounds like it was a time for experimentation.
Yeah, it was just, playful time, and then double act. So I met Gordon, and we played around with acrobalance. So I stood on his shoulders. He stood on my shoulders. He flipped me, pitched back me. And then we played around with a lot of the same humor that Skate Naked were playing around. My influences for double acts were Skate Naked, also the Uncles, Alex and John.
What kind of humor was Skate Naked doing? You say it was that kind of humor. Was it walk by? Was it kind of generic style jokes, or?
No, kind of just like 2 crazy guys. You don't know what they're going to do.
So it's quite an anarchic kind of energy.
And slapstick, I guess, if you want to give it a name.
Okay.
So.
And did you guys tour after this, or did you stay in Barcelona?
Yeah, no, we drove in his truck all the way down south, met some other wonderful, crazy characters. Ended up doing another double act with another guy, but I didn't stop performing with Gordon. We just, it was just very playful, creative time. ended up right in the south of Spain. And then sort of January, there was no people on the street. It was just, and I wasn't good at saving my money, so we just like holed up in this olive grove, and like I just sort of lived off the savings of others for a month, and then we went to Cadiz Carnival, my 19th birthday, February 94, and I made it all back again in the first night of that festival. It was like crazy. Like,
what was that festival?
Man, the Carnival de Cadiz.
But when I say what was it, I mean, can you explain the atmosphere, the environment?
Yeah, there's basically broken glass and drunk people 24/7, fireworks and sherry and drunk Spaniards in costumes, like the public, but in carnival costumes 24/7 for 2 weeks.
And so what do you do there? Do you go and like just push the crowd back to do something as opposed to having to draw a crowd?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
And how had your work progressed by this point?
It just got tighter, and we learned when and where to do it to make the most money, you know. So Gordon had been in a circus, I'd been in a circus. We weren't total chumps as performers, you know. I say I was a chump in Edinburgh because doing that English show, street show style amongst the best in the world, was really daunting. But in Spain, the standard of acts on the street were very poor. There was just like crusty fire blowers and penny whistle acts. And I worked in a circus. I had, high standard of acrobatic skill. Gordon had been in a circus. We were good, but we didn't know when and where to do it to make the money, and it was complete sheer luck. Everything we did was an experiment. So when we made money, it was like, wow, how did that work? Well, okay, we must remember that. That's the time to work, but that's the place to work. That's what to say. That's how to get that's how to get the laughs. That's how to get them to like you. That's how to get them to trust you. That's how to get them to give you money.
And obviously, by the sounds of by the time you go to the carnival, you've acquired enough of this knowledge to begin to capitalize from the performance.
Yeah.
And so, what comes after the festival? So, what comes after the festival then?
I've just remembered a story from that time.
Okay.
So I just wanted to meet girls. Like, it was really hard to meet girls because we were just moving from town to town. We'd do a show, then we'd get in a truck, drive to the next town. So we were there for 2 weeks. So I wanted to meet girls. So we'd done shows, and I was stood outside this nightclub, absolutely rat-assed on sherry, and there was these hot girls. So I decided to show off and show them that I was a really cool acrobat guy, and did a back somersault, landed on my face into broken glass, shredded my lips and my whole face. So
did you get the girls?
Good. No.
You got to visit the hospital.
I didn't go to hospital, man. Come on, like. Just went back to the truck, first aid kit, bit of iodine.
Went back out drinking.
No, I think I took a few days off. I must have taken a couple of weeks off. I remember my lip was like swollen. It wasn't that bad after a few days. Just looked like I was in a violent domestic relationship.
It's like fracas had gone on. Fracas. So what do you do after that then? Do you guys keep touring around? Do you hit the festival or the carnival and then go to another place?
Yeah, so we ended up in France. Went to Avignon Festival.
What's the Avignon Festival?
and then the Aurillac Fest. Avignon's like the French Edinburgh.
Okay.
And did very well there, and made proper good money, which I still never saved. And I think I hitchhiked back. Gordon stayed in France, and I hitchhiked back to the UK.
Why did you come back to the UK?
I can't remember. Just I've been away a while, In fact, no. I came back to UK in April, and then ended up going back out for Avignon, because I remember I met Pete Malmachek and Chris Gibbs in who were double act called Hoopal, and there was a street performing style competition in Greenwich, Cutty Sark Pitch, and I entered that and like won a category, like the best acrobatic act, but I was the only acrobatic act. And I remember this guy said, he was a musician, and he was like, you're a very good showman, but you're not funny. You shouldn't try and be funny. And it really like stayed with me. It's, like, fuck that guy.
I'll show you.
Yeah, fuck him. Like, what a thing to say. But yeah, no, I wasn't funny, so fair enough. But so yeah, and then so I went back out to France, met back up with Gordon. We went to Avignon. We went to Aurillac, where I met a very young, very green Mark Rothman. This like sandal wearing, top knot wearing hippie kid, and I thought I was older than him. Like, I was 18, he would have been about 23, 24. Or I was 19 then. He must have been. He's way older. He would have been like 20. Might have been 27 then, or something. But he looked really young and really green and really shit at performing. And he'd already been busking in Japan, but just juggling walk by on the Tokyo tube trains. But we didn't hang out or anything. I just remember meeting because there was another English guy in a French little small festival. I think I saw the Uncles play that festival. And they did it in French as well. They did their show in French. And then I met Mark a year later in Australia, in Sydney.
Okay, and who's Mark Rothman then? You mention him as if he's a person of note. Who is Mark Rothman?
Well, everyone who's watching this knows Sparky Mark.
So people might watch this in 100 years' time. I just want to give a little bit of context.
So Mark Rothman is now the owner, proprietor of Top Secret Comedy Club, one of the top comedy clubs in the UK. And we all know him as a busker from Covent Garden who juggled a chainsaw, and he made more money than most of us, and he saved his money and then invested his money and then invested his investments in projects that generated more revenue, and then he won't buy his mates a drink.
Yeah, he's a millionaire who you go for a coffee with, and you buy the coffee.
Yeah, I'm one of the few people that managed to. I consider it a great achievement to have been bought drinks.
I was in the club the other day, and I got a drink on the house, so I have to say that.
The other day.
Yeah, the other day, like a couple of weeks ago.
A few weeks ago, yeah.
A few weeks ago, before lockdown went down. Yeah, it's not an illicit
Yeah.
speakeasy during lockdown. So he became quite a competent busker by the end of his career, then I take it.
Yeah, he was shit for ages. That's the moral of the story. It's like, keep trying.
Don't give up.
Yeah, don't give up.
So what happened to you after the French festivals?
Yeah, so, traveled to Australia.
Why go to Australia?
because it was not winter.
I understand the pragmatic reason of why,
summer.
but what put that idea in your head? Was there other people talking about it? Or?
Yes. So so Windsor, who was a Covent Garden performer, is now a stand-up comedian. He'd been the year before. I'd met Damien in Edinburgh. I think I'd met Living Space by then, and a few other people were talking about how they would just hop across the planet season to season. So we got on a plane, me and Gordon, to Bangkok, and then bought tickets from Bangkok. So we were told that was the cheapest way to do it. And we decided to quit smoking on the plane there, because like 13 hours, hardest bit of quitting smoking is the first 13 hours, right? So if you've done that, you may as well just not smoke. But then you're in a Southeast Asian city known for its nightlife, and then whiskey happens, and then cravings happen. And so we had this blood oath of I won't smoke if you won't smoke. So one of us, I wanted to scrounge a ciggy off someone, and he'd go, no, you can't, and he doesn't let me. And very sort of dysfunctional double act relationship. And then I don't, but I'm really angry. And then he does scrounge one without me seeing it, but doesn't smoke it in front of me. And we get back to the hotel room, and he pulls it out, because his strategy, fair enough, is probably if I just have one and we're in the room, then it's just going to be one. Whereas if we're smoking out in the bar, then this one will turn into a packet. So, but he's 10 years older, and he knows, he's got his strategy. He's like, no, just one. And I'm like, no, if you took it out of my mouth, I took it out of yours. So I take it out of his mouth, and he punches me. So I just punch him back, and I split his eye open, and blood just gushes everywhere. And we're just hammered on whiskey. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, you better stitch that up. I'm not going to some fucking Southeast Asian hospital in Bangkok this time of night. I'm like, oh God, I don't know how to stitch up wounds. And he's like, well, you know how to cause them. You better learn how to heal them. So drunk, we got the sewing kit out, and I kid you not, I stitched up his eye, and it was really hard, just like a sewing needle. And I had to get a piece of leather on my palm to push through the skin. It was really hard to stitch, but there's no scarring to this day, because the wound was stitched early in the golden hour.
Yeah. Well, good work. No infections. His eye didn't swell up like this and go green.
Yeah, and his scar, he had a bit of a Frankenstein scar for the first 2 weeks in Australia. But, healed up, as did our friendship.
And what's quite fun about that is it seems like you, as a double act, you went on adventures together, and you had parties together, and it wasn't just this jobby thing where you were working and moving from place to place. You were young people having fun together, right?
Yeah, well, back then it wasn't a job. It was a way to avoid getting a job.
Okay. And is that the way you looked at it? It's it was kind of a thing of, it's a lifestyle kind of thing.
I still do.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I thought it was just a way of traveling the world. I did not think of it as a career. I just thought, I'm going to go to uni next year. This is gap year. I'll see the world. And this is a way to travel. That's why I wasn't saving my money. I was just this is just a way to get from A to B.
And so did the gap year get pushed back year after year? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Did it just kept getting pushed back and back? Fair enough. So what was it like in Australia? What was the impressions for the young AJ going there?
Australian hospitality amongst performers was really mixed. It was they were kind of oh, we don't really want foreign performers here, but at the same time, come to my house for dinner, and we're taking you surfing. The best guy was a guy called Dom Ferry, and he kind of was like, like running the Sydney performing scene, and he was amazing, sort of welcoming host, and he like had parties at his house, and he really sort of took me under his wing and gave us gigs, got us on the pitches that you have to sort of have a vouch. There was like pitches like Circular Quay where you could anyone could work, and there was Darling Harbour where you need someone to vouch for you. And
was that just someone saying they'd seen your show?
Yeah, well, he saw our show, our double act. It was okay,
Yeah, and so and you said there was hostility in terms of on the pitch, so people didn't invite you?
There was just this sort of general vibe of like, a bit like we do with the, Canadians and everyone that used to come over seasonally. It was like, now there's 10 more acts. It was like that. But at the same time, we went to dinner at each other's houses. We went out on boat trips. It was so much more social than in Europe, in the UK, where we were social at festivals at Edinburgh, but the everyday grind wasn't that social. You socialise with your friends, whereas there was a real scene in Sydney. It was lovely. We'd go to Damien's house. Everyone would come to my house. I met my wife. Like, we met a lady and we married, and she was working. She was.
You say we met a lady. Was that the double act as well?
Yeah, she was doing a double act. Sam and Mez were doing a juggling double act, and I ended up marrying Sam. So I ended up in Australia for quite a few years. And it was like, golden time.
They're happy days, I take it.
Yeah, so I've got a story about surfing. So there was this fucking crazy American performer called Forrest, and he gave us a lift in his yellow bus, and he's like smoking a massive fat spliff, driving this bus down these tiny country lanes, and we're going up the East Coast, and he's just totally fucking blitzed and not giving a shit, and like he's wearing shades at night, smoking a big fat spliff. I remember he passed the spliff, and when I passed it back discreetly, like you would do in England to avoid detection, he's like, "I don't want to spliff down there. I want it up here where I can see it," like, And I remember saying to him, like, don't you ever like worry about getting pulled by the police? He goes, "No, it's too obvious. I'm like a black guy with dreads smoking a spliff in a hippie bus. It's not a game to them. It's too easy for them. They don't actually pull me." And I was like, blatancy is quite a good disguise. Anyway, he's driving down this road, and he's driving down this road, and like oncoming cars, playing chicken with oncoming cars to scare me and Sam, who were like, young 19. He was like about 14. We were like 19, and making these cars just like swerve out of his way, and we were just fucking terrified. And we finally arrive at the beach alive, and this guy Ashley and this guy Brett took us, and Damien was there too. So Damien, Ashley, and Brett took us surfing. Maybe Brett was away, so I borrowed Brett's board and got out, nearly fucking drowned so many times. And then there was this bit where Gordon's board flipped up in the air. He rolled off it and came towards me. I rolled off my board, but the fin got embedded in my board. So it broke the fin off. And Damien and Ashley and it was just Damien and Ashley were like, "Brett is gonna kill you. Like, that's his baby. Like, you've broken the fin off his board." And like, well, there's two boards ruined. There was like the board, the broken fin, and the board with the fin embedded in it. And he was like, this isn't gonna. And I was covered in fucking jellyfish bites, and I nearly drowned. It was just so traumatic. I just imagined I would be like a natural surfer. No, No, I wasn't. And we get back to Brett's house, and they really wound me up that Brett was going to be like very angry, and he just like walks in and just goes, "I told you, man, pommies don't belong in the ocean." And like, and they all start laughing at me for being scared that he was going to kill me.
So there's this real matey kind of culture there, where everyone's taking the piss out of each other, winding each other up, playing with each other, poking fun, like a family kind of thing.
Not non-stop bullying. Bullying was rife. It was just like, great. Bring back bullying.
I heard a story the other day that was involved with David Castle. By the way, just to quickly tell you, in the comments, we have David Castle saying hi, Jules, Robbo Roberts. So there's a story with David Castle the other day about a flag getting tied to the top of a tree. Somebody had done it in the middle of the night.
I've heard that story from Rex, a couple of others several times. But I'll tell you a good hot story. He rescued me. Like, I was in Perth. It's like to a fight because I was doing a walk by gag to the wrong person. The guy like attacked me. I pushed him away. Another guy attacked me from behind. I threw him over my shoulder. The police arrested me, not to, but to protect me. And they went, "You need to like leave town. We're taking your busting license off you. You can't work here because we don't want you to get stabbed. These are like known thugs." So I was in Perth, and I called up Hartstead. I called him up. I think somehow called him up. I was like, "Have you got any gigs in Melbourne or something?" And he goes, "Yeah, I've got a small Victorian town tour with Shane and Shep, Space Cowboy and Shep Huntley." And he booked me, I think, paid for the flight and put me in a bus with Shane and Shep, and we toured these wonderful small towns of Victoria for the 2 weeks. For the 2 weeks that my license was revoked, and then I flew back to Perth and carried on, and the drunken thugs had forgotten all about it.
So it's just enough time to let everything calm down.
Yeah, there's a couple of times Hotch has actually rescued me. Yeah.
It seems like the entire community there was all looking after each other.
Yeah. But again, you know, there was a lot of bitching and gossiping and bullying there.
But there's a strange irony with it. I don't think it's just nostalgia. That when it came to it, people helped each other, even though there was a lot of bickering and bullying and bitching. It seemed that when it came down to the crunch, everyone picked each other up off the ground.
Yeah, I think that happens when it was a lot harder to do shows in Australia. You know, it's less populated, really hot days. It was tough to build a crowd. So, you know, it's like that in Covent Garden when in the winter time, especially midweek, anyone who turns up is like, you know, we're brothers. We're going out in the cold and harsh conditions, and if anyone could pull a show, it's like respect. Whereas in the summertime on bank holiday, you're like, "Oh, who's this fucking cunt that wants to take up my prime time that I can use that?" You know.
So it's into the breach as opposed to
harsh all times.
Yeah.
It's just there's a lot more solidarity, I think. But I think that's from what I hear, that's kind of changed as, you know, their festival circuit developed. You know, Adelaide was once every 2 years at that point, and every street performer in Australia knew each other, and most of us were friends.
And so why leave Australia? It seems like you had a family there. It seems like you were doing shows. Things were going well for you. Why not stay there until this day?
I didn't leave. I just didn't go back. I mean, I was going back and forth. I was coming and doing a festival season in Europe, doing Edinburgh, Avignon, and then broke up from my wife, stayed in Europe, and decided to go to other countries in Europe that I hadn't been to in the winter. So I went to Italy one winter instead of going to Australia one winter. And then I ended up back in the UK in the spring.
And so when you go to Italy and you go to other places which are non-English speaking, do you then draw upon the skills you developed first in Spain and later, I assume, in Aurillac and in France, the silent mime work.
Yeah, well, no, Australia kind of was back to the extreme of that, the one trick show, or the patter. Yeah, it was really hard to do a European style show there. You could do it on festival days,
but I mean, sorry, carry on.
I broke up from the double act. I actually learned my solo show in Australia, and then I really wanted to learn to master my solo show in the UK. It wasn't long enough or strong enough as a solo act, and I wanted to, I was really inspired by the English kind of comedy acts that were really funny. Aussie shows were very good, but apart from like Living Space and a few others, they weren't that funny. They were very slow, deliberate, the kind of Richie Rich, Al Miller, like really strong shows, big laughs, but not nuanced like you can be with an English crowd. I mean, the nuance was kind of wasted on Aussies. And
was that because of the Aussies, or was it just not the culture to present that there? Do you think it was?
No, it was just because it's too hot. Like in Melbourne where it's not so hot, you could do nuance, but it's like, get on with it, mate, get fucked. Whereas in Covent Garden and Edinburgh, you could have a lot more play. So I was kind of inspired by like, English Covent Garden acts and Edinburgh acts, and I wanted to sort of master that.
So how did you go about that then? Well, how did you begin doing that when you came back? It seems like you had the intention to come back to England.
Like I say, I'm still working on it.
Okay. Well, when you came back from Australia, you did Italy and you did Europe. And I think we're all working on it our entire lives. I don't think no one I've spoken to yet has turned around to me and said, and that's when I did perfect. And I knew that I'd done the best I could possibly do. And I don't think anyone feels that. So when you come back from Australia, you do Italy, you do a few of the places in Europe, but you say that you wanted to master the kind of play that you saw in Covent Garden in Edinburgh. How'd you go about that?
Stealing lines.
So I suppose the good beginning for this is, what year are we at now? Are we at 95, 97?
No, so basically I met then Tony, the mother of my kids, and she got pregnant, and so then I stayed in the UK. We had a baby, and we were in North Wales. Me and Dave Southern were running a circus school, a little community circus school, and we moved up to the Lake District when Tim was about 1, and I think we would drive up to Chester every other weekend, do shows there.
And that's you and Dave?
Went back, no, me and Tony.
Okay.
I didn't have a license.
So it was you and Tony running a circus school together?
And Dave Southern, yeah. He got us a gig. Yeah.
And what was it like running that school?
Taught trapeze.
And so what was it like running that school? Because that seems like a change of pace from your life up to that point. Well,
it went back into the other hat that I wear, which is an acrobatics tutor. So it was and again, that's a lot. It's not a crazy, I was writing modules for qualifications in acrobatics and delivering courses, and we were producing cabaret shows. So it was more of a job, more serious, less of a sort of hedonistic, crazy, spontaneous lifestyle. And that fitted in with having a kid, and so I know I went back to college, studied up on sports therapy and injury rehabilitation, and then really sort of didn't do that many street shows. And I remember for like a period of 4 or 5 years, I saw lots of my contemporaries overtake me massively in like the size of their show, the prestige they enjoyed. They were still touring the world, getting bigger and bigger shows and going to bigger and bigger festivals. And I was just like a part-time performer and part-time sports coach slash sports therapist in the Lake District in a quiet little mountain village.
And so, do you think the shows suffered for that, or did the shows sort of stay in stasis, so they didn't improve, but they didn't get worse? Or
yeah, but stasis in this game is like downhill. Plateauing just felt, I felt like I'd, lost it. Didn't feel great. Yeah, I remember going to Edinburgh and just being like, oh, okay, I'm not up there anymore.
And you felt that before? You felt like you were with your peers, level with your peers?
Yeah, because I started quite young, and in those first years from 18 to 25, Tim was born, so 7 years was just all up, bigger and better, globe-trotting, jet-setting, festival to festival, big shows, big hats, big bookings. I did it. We actually did some. Looking back, it's just all perspective. We actually were doing very nice gigs and doing very well-paid corporate gigs. I had a good life, I had my sports therapy clinic and my coaching, and then I'd do the odd like nice gig, but I didn't feel like I was one of the greats at all.
Well, so you say it's the perspective. I suppose there's less community status from that. The gigs you're doing are for the people who are contracting you, and you're not going and getting huge amounts of love from the performers community from those gigs, even though, as you say, looking at it, it was completely it was successful. You were being a success in your life at that time, but it sounds like you didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
So what was next then? How did things evolve after that?
I moved to, I'll just talk about the kind of different work we did as well. It wasn't, I sort of had a few different kind of strings to my bow. So we were doing like fire shows to music, we were doing cabaret shows. So I started to diversify. So I had a sort of, I accepted I wasn't like rocking the Canadian festival circuit, but I could do a fire show, I could do a cabaret show, I could host a stand-up club. I started running. Yeah, that's what happened. I was still in Cumbria, and I wanted to learn stand-up, and it was either get in a car and drive to Manchester or Birmingham, or put on your own gig. So I put on my own gig. In fact, I put on 3, and then hired people to come from London to my gig, and then watch them and learn from them, and developed the art of like making people laugh in a room, which is a lot easier than making people laugh in a wet shopping street, actually.
Well, that's quite surprising to hear. I always assumed it was more difficult inside a room where people are coming waiting to see you be funny, as opposed to people on the street who are surprised by the fact that you might be funny.
No, it's that psychological barrier is, but no, it's definitely a lot easier to make pissed people laugh at night than busy people laugh in the day.
Okay, and how did you develop? And so Rex Boyd says that he loved the big fire show you guys did in Appleby. So I know you can't see the comments, so I thought I'd just let you know for that. And Deb Robinson says hi as well. Jewel Howarth says Noel Britton was a huge influence. No question mark. So Jules Howarth talks about Noel Britton. Was Noel Britton the influence on you?
Yeah, kind of. Indirectly, I think Dave Southern telling me about his head in the bucket escape gave me the idea of having a bucket of water as a focus, because I didn't really have any props back then. So the bucket of water was that I needed something to put down on the ground, saying there's something going to happen in this with this.
Well, how interesting the chronology of that then, because I assume that's Sid Rasputin, then it goes to Noel Britton, and then to you when you were beginning. Fascinating. Yeah. So when you're doing the stand-up, yeah. How long does it take you to get good at it?
One time, me and Jules did a double act at a Renegade show in a juggling convention, and yeah, we were both off our faces. It was really funny. I can't remember it. That's how I know we must have been off our faces. But it was very fun. It was very fun.
Cool. Well, nice little story. So, how quickly did you progress through stand-up? How quickly did you acquire the skills, having all this experience of entertaining, performing previous?
Well, what other stand-ups said was, I say other stand-ups, I mean proper stand-ups said, well, you've got the confidence and the crowd control, just write, just write material, do your material, stop doing your devices, stop doing your sort of street show devices, which are so easy to do.
What do you mean by a device?
It's easy. Everybody cheer if you're from here, everybody cheer if you're from there. It shows confidence, it puts the room at ease. And I used those as crutches, and I didn't just like do a Byron Bertram and just like write material and write and work on it and tweak it and write. I would just lose my confidence and go back to tricks. And I had this vacillating between having confidence in my material and falling back on gimmicks and tricks. And then as a booker, I wanted to book some variety because I wanted it for my audience. I thought it was boring just seeing, another guy come on and talk about his, the same subject. So I wanted to book. I booked Rex Boyd. I wanted to book Steve Royal, who won Britain's Got Talent, or came to Britain's Got Talent. He was my first headliner in my first comedy club. And I realized that it was, and Rex was killing the stand-up circuit as a variety act.
Was Rex juggling then?
Yeah, he was killing it and finished. He was doing it all stand-up for about 30 minutes and then finished like last 10 minutes doing his juggling set. And so I went, why do I have to be a stand-up? Why can't I just do a variety set but indoors? And then that led to me getting booked more for cabarets at festivals, less and less street shows. Ended up doing the burlesque tour, one of the biggest burlesque shows in Britain or in Europe, and we toured major theatres. That was amazing.
What was the name of the tour?
An Evening of Burlesque.
Okay, and so what were you doing there?
At first, I was one of two speciality acts, and the rest were all just either flingers or sing and fling. So a flinger is just a stripper to music, and the sing and fling is, well, exactly what it says. And then there was the hoop girl and me, dotted first and second half. She was a closer. I was first half, and then they ended up giving me two spots, a first half and a second half spot, and it was good money and it was fucking easy, just like get driven around the country, taken to nice theaters, and yeah, it was so fucking easy. But it made me so lazy as a stand-up because I just didn't go and work the grind of the comedy circuit. I didn't go and play tough rooms like Byron did, and I didn't develop, and I didn't tweet about how glamorous my career was.
I don't know if we've lost him there, if we've lost me. I can't tell. I'm hoping. I think we've lost him. So AJ talks a lot about not tweaking his career, his glamorousness. I'm going to text him while we're talking, try and keep him in. AJ hasn't talked about it yet, but I think he was developing stuff during that time. He claims that he didn't develop, but he developed a boylesque routine. So his work did change and mold into the environment he was in. I find it quite interesting when you talk to AJ, even talking when he talks reticently about, he talks reflectively about the reticent nature he had of his life when he was doing the workshops. And when he sat and thought about it, he actually realized that it was successful and it was him being down upon it. And I think maybe in his life, it appears there's a striving to attain something in his life. And instead of at the time looking around and observing what's going on at the moment and appreciating and savoring it, maybe. Let me just text him and see if he's on the line coming back. As I say before, when I first watched AJ perform, when I was a young performer, he seemed like the most confident man alive. Walked out there and owned the stage, held the stage. And what is quite interesting, I think it's something we'll talk about a bit more in the interview if we get AJ back on. If we don't get him back on, we'll tie the interview up and we'll come back to it at a later date. Is that he had a moment of rediscovery in his show, I think. It felt like he and this is at a later point, this must be post 2000, because I started performing in 2003, 2004, and I saw him for what I thought at the time was full power at 2005, 2006. And then we come to 2012, 2013, I could see him trying to rediscover himself again, trying to redefine who he was. And perhaps that's because he wasn't the young man anymore. And he had to move on from being the young man into being, you know, 30, mid 30s, 40s, being an older person. Remember that has a different nature, a different character that has to be imbued. I'm glad to see that he's now back on form and he's now powering through again. I'll be very interested to hear that. I think we've got a little bit of chat from him again. He should be back in. Try and join again. So I'm just going to resend him the link, everyone. Sorry about the distraction. I want to thank everyone for watching so far, guys. It's been really appreciated in this entire project to have everybody here watching the videos, dropping in, seeing the people's lives. I hope everybody here has enjoyed the interviews that have been going on so far. I'm really, really happy to say that very soon there's a good chance that we are going to get Arts Council funding. The application's going in this week. Literally, well, let's say this week, in the next 7 days. And when that application funding goes through, we're going to have an editor who will make 20-minute shorts from every single interview that's been done. So we'll have 20 minutes, 10 minutes, you know, these kind of short edited pieces. And these short edited pieces will be then put on YouTube and aim to be like a life story promo where we'll get some original footage, we'll put some photographs in, and then that can be something watched by not just us. That can be watched by people who aren't necessarily part of the community, as a way to start informing people about street performance and about the culture and the lives that we have. So I think we've got AJ back. Let's bring him back in.
Back now on 4G. My Wi-Fi went a bit AWOL, so
welcome back, buddy. Well, 4G seems okay. Yeah, the picture quality is not too bad. So you were saying about working in the burlesque clubs and not developing your stand-up. But something I wanted to say was, you developed boylesque routines at that time, right? You developed routines which integrated variety with burlesque as a male performer.
Had a lot of help from Rex Boyd there as well. Can I go for a cigarette and I'll take the phone with you? We'll see if it stays on.
You can do that if you like. You can't smoke in the... No, okay, yeah, let's go for a cigarette. Let's go on a journey. So we're going to see AJ's house now, everybody.
And while we're like doing something different, can I interview you now? Can I just ask you a few questions?
Yeah, very, very quickly, yeah, of course. I mean, I'll do my own interviews at some point, but please carry on while we're on the move.
So apart from Whining On, have you got any personal projects?
Yeah, very much so. So I've got a lot of performing kind of projects. So during lockdown, I've always played at rope walking. I've really loved rope walking. I say loved it. I did it a couple of months a year when it was summer, just mucking about on it. I liked standing on a rope, and I liked the feeling of standing on a rope, but I never really applied myself to become good at it. And so what I did at the beginning of lockdown is I bought a rope, I got the rope, and I said, I am going to dedicate maybe 10, 15, 20 hours a week to getting good performance quality, if possible, higher than standard performance quality to do this rope act. And there's a rope act I always wanted to do since the beginning of me performing. I saw this 1930s circus routine on black and white footage, this grainy footage where you see a guy dressed as a gentleman, drunk, falling over on this rope and struggling to step on this rope. And the final piece, he stops on the rope and then stands with his legs on the rope like that. So if this is the rope, this is legs, his legs on the rope like that, and then begins to sway the rope like this. And the rope, he's going so fast, it looks like the rope is, and his legs are blurring. I've later realized that the reason it looks like his legs are blurring is because there's very slow shutter speed for those those 100-year-old videos. So it's not quite that fast that it would blur in real life, but nonetheless, it had an impact on me. So I wanted to develop this drunk on a rope routine. And I did do more or less 15, 20 hours a week throughout majority of the core lockdown. And I've continued doing that. And now for the first time, when I came back in August, when the shows are happening again, I now do a rope walking finale, which isn't really what I wanted. I wanted to do something which had a whole narrative to it. And it wasn't a kind of contract, I'm going to do this trick, cheer if I do this trick kind of thing. But that has come in just now to keep me doing the rope while work's going on, and to have a finale that isn't the tennis racket, which I've become utterly sick with over the years of doing tennis racket. And so now I can walk on a rope fairly confidently. I can kick a hat from my foot onto a head on the rope. I can spin a hat on my finger. I can do a move on the rope that I don't think anyone else does, as far as I'm aware. I've talked to Lindsay about it, a few of the people, and they say that no one does this thing where you begin spinning around the rope and then you throw your shoulders down and your entire body axis is around your crotch, spinning around on this rope. There's a lot of tricks I do, which are gymnast bar tricks around the rope, underneath the rope. So I'm really pleased with that, and I've really worked hard for it, and I'm going to continue putting the hours in to develop that as a piece of circus craft. I'm quite pleased that when I started my performing career, I was doing skills, and then I moved away from skills, and I actively didn't want to do skills. I wanted to do comedy on the street, and I wanted to do kind of something which had some semblance of art on the street. And I've managed to recontact my joy of doing some skills now and putting skills back into the work again, which is nice considering I'm getting older and I might not be able to do it for that much longer.
Yeah, you're not that old yet.
No, not yet, but I'm getting there.
So next question, what value is sacred to you?
Oh, wow. What value is, as I assume, is most sacred if you want one value?
Yeah.
God, that's a difficult question. In terms of performance, the ability to give access to truth. And it doesn't have to be a truthful statement to give access to truth. If you say something, present something, manage to frame and capture a moment in front of a crowd that then informs them of something truthful, some reality, some perspective that they might not have had otherwise, and that they can take away with them and understand more. That's the greatest thing ever in my mind. That's you're achieving your goal as an artist. And some Dave Rave said something quite interesting the other day, and I didn't get into much of a debate with him in the interview about it because I didn't want to get bogged down in how I feel. I've learned since doing the early interviews not to bring my own thing into the interviews too much. But he said that he believed that entertainers are not selfish and that artists are selfish. And the joy of an entertainer is he cares about his audience. And I thought then, well, I kind of am an artist. I'd like to believe, poncy as it sounds, because I do care. And what he said is the artist cares about what he wants to say and fuck all else. And I get that. I do care about what I want to do. But the reason I want to do that is because I want to inform and I want to make the audience's understanding better. Not that I know more about it, but I have an opportunity to frame and show something real when we're doing street shows. You know, the clown shows a mirror to the world kind of thing. And so that's the kind of focus.
Okay. Good answer. Okay. What was the last book you read?
Oh, Christ. The last book I read, I think, was 1960s Psychological Manual. It was about 5 years ago. I'm very poorly read. I do absorb a lot of information, but I do it through YouTube videos and audiobooks rather than reading. I can read, but my eye tends to move around the page very erratically. What was the last YouTube video you watched then? The last YouTube video I watched that informed me.
What subject?
I look at science, I look at politics a lot, so I try and keep up to date. There's a channel called A Different Bias that I look at, which is a guy who's a political analyst. He's a mathematician that analyzes politics, and he talks about the daily politics within the government, which I find very interesting. I've recently...
yeah. Last question.
Yeah.
What was the best advice anyone's ever given you?
Okay, so the best advice anyone given me, and I don't know if it's necessarily the best advice, but it was the most vital advice for me at the time, was I was a young man and I was a nihilist. I was an utter nihilist. I thought literally there was no point to life, that this is all just a brutal grinding of horror, to speak. Everything pleasant is a veneer hiding the horror. There's no point in anything. Why carry on? Take as many drugs as you can until you die, and the sooner you die, probably the better. And someone turned around to me and said to me in a club at one point, I can't remember necessarily who it was, I think it's this young Buddhist lad who had his own issues in his own life. He wasn't, like a paragon of knowledge. He just said this one thing which chimed in me, was that he said, no, there is a point, and the point is that people copy each other. So everyone who watches you, everyone who sees you is influenced by your behavior and by your conduct. And so the point of life is that you lead a good life and you set an example for other people, and then other people will learn from you, and you make the world better.
Oh God, the way. Example.
Well, I don't think you have. You've gone, you've had adventures, you've made people happy, you've led a reasonably sincere life, you've been very creative and productive. That's a great example to people. You've strived to be knowledgeable, despite the fact that we may disagree on some points of knowledge. You've strived for that, and that's the kind of thing. A lot of things. You can rely on NASA data. I'm sorry, but aside from all of those things, the point is that other people look at you and they watch you, and we learn by copying each other. So you can't help but have influence on other people by the things you do. And so that's the point in living. The point in living is that your legacy is the other people that see you and live on after you, and the influence you have on them resonates in the influence they have on other people. And so after you're gone and dead, the influences you've had on people lives on after you, and that's the point. And that was the best advice I ever had. That gave me a reason to live. It gave me a point of feeling like you could have a positive effect.
Well, that's a great answer. How do you like the tables being turned?
I'll be honest, I like the sound of my own voice. It took me a long time to actually train myself not to blabber on too much about what I think in these interviews, because in the end we only have 2 hours now to sit and talk, and I want to get as much of your life and who you are as possible into this archive in that time. We can come and do something again. We can do another interview, of course, but while we're here now and while the people are watching, I really want to understand your life. And so the point we left off on,
I think it's important. That I really like about these interviews is that they're not scripted, that the interview is spontaneous, off the cuff. It really gives the feeling of two friends chatting, showing. Sorry, I can't read my own writing.
It's all right. You did your best. So you developed Boylesque, right? you was in this cabaret. You didn't just do your cabaret bit as a variety act. You tried to integrate what was around you and tried to acclimatize your work to that, right?
Yeah. I played the room.
And did that work? Did you feel like you'd achieved this integration of variety and burlesque?
Yeah. But yeah, and I guess I could still be doing that, but yeah, I came back to the street. I sort of left the tour and well, kind of got pushed, dumped, and
why do you think you got dumped?
And I came back.
Was it just turning over of staff, or
no? Because I kind of burnt my bridges over a misunderstanding. That was basically what happened. Is like we would all drink on the tour, right? And I could do my show, buzzed. I mean, I would only have like one beer before the show, and then one beer at the interval, and then a couple of beers after the show. And then one time before quite a big gig in York, it was York Playhouse, I locked my props in my car. I was going to drive there, and I lost the key, the fob key to this hire car. And because I was drunk, and this was the night before, comes the day of the gig, I can't get to my props, can't get in my car. So but I'm like professional. I should have pulled a sickie and been dishonest and not authentic. But my sacred value is like, one of them is like the show must go on. Do you know what I mean? Like just work with what you got. So I was like, I don't need any props. I'll just borrow a costume and I'll just do the somersault over the girl in the chair, and I'll do some new material. I'll write some new material. I'll write some good stand-up, yeah? And so I did. I sat down and wrote some gold, and I borrowed some like gold spandex off like a housemate and or a neighbor or something, and went to the theatre, and I didn't want to have a drink before this because I had to remember my new material. So I went to the pub beforehand to meet up with a friend of mine, Trevor Rooney, who lived in York, and I only had like a 3% shandy, yeah, not enough to touch the sides, right? And then I had 4 hours to sober up from that 3% shandy, and I meditate, I do push-ups, I do like breathing, I do like, and I go through the script, and I go out there and I fucking smash it. But it was shorter than my normal set, but it was gold. And there was another guy who was at the other variety act, Yes Edwards, who, let's say, self-indulgent and just did like a 20-minute set when he was supposed to do like 15 or 10.
Which ate up like the short time.
Yeah. So the show was fine. The audience loved it. It was no problem. But like it was a misunderstanding. I was saying to someone else that in the cast that how seriously I was taking this gig because I had new material, and that I'd spent 4 hours sobering up to prepare for the gig. And bear in mind, every gig we did, people were drinking champagne. We would go and fly to gigs in Europe, and we'd start with champagne in the morning at the airport, That was the whole tour. So I thought I was in, like safe company to just say, well, I was just saying, I went to the pub, but I came straight back. I didn't even have a whole pint, had half a shandy, and came back 4 hours of sobering up and then went on sober. But that was heard as, this guy gets drunk before juggling knives on a stage. And there are rules. There's signs backstage in these big theatres saying, alcohol is prohibited before live performance. You've got to have that for insurance to work and stuff. So that was relayed to the bosses who sent me an email saying, like, we hear that you were like drunk and you didn't have your props with you. You didn't have your normal costume. You didn't do your full 15-minute contracted set. And so we're letting you go. And I was supposed to write back, go, no, it was a misunderstanding. Like, I didn't do my full set because yes, did an extra bit. And I was doing new material, which was gold, and it worked. And, but I didn't. I was just like, you ungrateful bastards. I was going the extra mile for you. So the show went on. And this is how you treat me. So I wrote like a shitty email back. Go, fuck you, I don't want to work for you cunts anymore. Yeah, big mistake. But then it brought me back to my true love performing, which is the street, which is family audiences. The burlesque is very kind of like niche, or it's like hasn't got legs. It's not, being an intergenerational performer, like being able to make grandparents and grandchildren laugh, and everyone in between, people from all over the walks of life, all over the world, to be able to make a universal variety act work anywhere, and you animate a street corner in a space, like that is a real, it's a real talent and a real like craft. And then I remember, sort of thinking that when I was touring big theatres, thinking, oh, I've left the street behind. I remember going back, not being able to pull a big crowd, and watching you and watching everyone, like being able to pull these big crowds in Covent Garden, like Dave Pickens up on his rope with massive crowd doing a Mexican wave. I was like, this is more glamorous than some of the shitty little pavilion theatres we've played. This is like not slumming it. This is, this is great. So I really wanted to learn how to do it again. I remember taking notes. I remember watching Mike Garrett in Winchester, actually with a notebook and pen, going, right, smile, tell them what you're going to do.
It's so strange that you're doing this, because you had this down. It's 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Did you lose the knowledge of it? The intuition was gone?
Lost my confidence, I mean, if you're used to just going out to a big introduction and a live band giving you a drum roll when you flip over someone, and you're in a program, you're on posters, and then you go out and go, hi, and no one's watching you, and like, watch me, I'm really good. I used to be really good at this. It's a tough one. It's a tough one.
And so is that the kind of classic thing when you see stage performers go onto the street? They've had no street experience whatsoever, and they spend 5 minutes trying to build a crowd, and then look dejected and walk off the pitch and go, oh, this is hard. Was it that kind of thing?
Yeah, not as bad. I had good shows and bad shows, but I didn't have that consistency. But I regained it from...
Well, but just before we got
actually deciding...
What year was it when you left or was pushed out of the tour?
It's getting on for 5 years ago now.
Oh, this is quite late. So we're looking 2015.
Yeah, I think I toured. Yeah, like from 2011, 2012 to 2015, 2016.
Yeah. And so, what was your first show like when you went back out? In graphic detail, if you can.
It was really good. It was a really I gained something. There was a lot more nuance that you can do on stage, and I thought it's worth learning how to get that level of focus on the street. But I didn't. You've got to practice. You've got to do it often, and so I could do it when it was easy, like at festivals and gigs. And I still sort of smashed it at gigs, but hitting the bricks properly, I didn't have the stamina, I didn't have the fitness, I just didn't have that, don't give a fuck attitude. I really cared if I was liked, I didn't sort of just do the numbers and grind.
Is that a thing of...
I was hurt, and I did less and less. It was downward spiral. So every time it didn't do well, I would do more teaching, more gigs, and less street. And you know, and that was just going down and down. It's like I'd be worse at it because I'd get less practice.
And do you think the process of you saying that you were hurt and you were holding yourself in was because the audience had negative empathy? You were going out there, and that difficult beginning of a street show where you don't have the focus, you were disappointed.
The audience,
they could feel that.
No, the audience. Yeah, well, yeah, of course they can feel that. Yeah, that's true. They can definitely feel your confidence. Yeah.
Or your need to be loved, and the fact that you feel like you're not being loved, and that tastes bad in their mind.
Absolutely, they can feel neediness. They can smell it straight away. So yeah, I still had that authenticity, and you know, when it worked, it worked well, and I had all that stagecraft to add to that. So there was little bits of loveliness, but it didn't seal. It wasn't a whole package. The pace of a street show to finish it off and get money and to finish high at the end of it, I couldn't do it. And that was when me and you went out in the car, and I was like, come on, let's just get out of town so I can do numbers, do 2 or 3 shows somewhere. And we drive to Canterbury and bang out shows, and you would like do twice the hat I was making on the same kind of pitch. And I didn't, you know, I didn't get it back until I actually decided to retire and become full-time Parkour Academy teacher. And so I was like, okay, I want to set up my own business. I'm going to need some money for that. The only way I really know how to make quick, easy money regularly is street. So forget being good at the street. I'll just do it so often that I accumulate some cash. I'll do it in the same place so I don't spend money touring. I'll just give myself residency at Covent Garden so that the expenses of my life are fixed. And if I just put the numbers in, I will accumulate enough money, put that into a website for the academy, leave street performing, be a full-time coach. And then I got good again because I did the grind.
Do you think it was the grind? And do you think also as well you jumped over a psychological hurdle?
No, it wasn't. Yeah, it was the hurdle. It wasn't just the grind. It was practice. So you do it often, you get good, you tighten it up. But it was also the fact that I wasn't doing it to be liked. I was doing it to make money. I mean, not, you know, I was just like, this is a number of the show. This is show number 1. This is show number 10, you know. And so that I wasn't like, oh, this is, you know, have I still got it? You know, will they like me? Am I good at this? I didn't give a fuck. I was just like,
and that was maybe more appealing to the crowds. You managed to shed off the negative feeling inside that the audience might have been empathizing with.
Yeah, totally. I shed the neurotic.
Yeah. And so how's it been going since then?
Yeah, well, then I just kept putting off doing the academy. I was just like, you know, I was set to launch in September, and then I was like, I'll launch at Christmas, I'll launch in spring, and then COVID hit, and now I'm forced to launch the academy, and that's what I've done.
And how's that going? What is the Parkour Academy?
It's going amazingly. I had like one student about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and now I've got a couple of dozen.
Can you just explain to everyone what it is before we go into
I went from 1 session a week with like 2 students to 2 sessions a week full, and personal.
But what is it? What is it the session of? What is the Parkour Academy? What does it teach? What's the thing you're doing sessions with?
So it's a system that I developed based on a book written by a French physical educationalist that he wrote over 100 years ago called The Method Naturelle. And that is the original form or system that parkour is derived, as we know it, is derived from. But true parkour, or what I call MP, natural method parkour, is is not about doing spectacular tricks or jumping off buildings. It's about developing a whole physical literacy. So being able to encounter different challenging landscapes spontaneously. So there's something called the gym fit principle, that if you do weight training, you just get good at weight training. If you do gymnastics, you get great at vaulting over a fixed, object, an obstacle that's the same every time you approach it. What you're endeavoring to develop as a practitioner of NMP is to be able to approach any obstacle, any shape, any size, any environment, any landscape, and deal with it. So it's like the difference between, say, boxing and Krav Maga or something. Krav Maga is a real fighting system. Boxing is like there's a referee and you're only allowed to hit there, so
there's restrictions and there's a controlled boundary of what you can and can't do, which creates an unreal environment for combat.
So parkour is a martial art for evasion, defense, and rescue. It's like a rescue martial art, so you'll be able to get to someone, carry them out of that over a challenging landscape, because you've got confidence and awareness and a physical literacy that can do everything that everyone's body is capable of it as well.
And this may sound redundant as a question, but I just want to hear you say the answer. What skills do you think you've drawn upon for your life to create this kind of teaching regime?
Relating to people, communicating clearly. So the way my coaching developed is that I say less to get more. So a rookie coach would be like, well, as you approach the obstacle, I want you to lunge at this perpendicular angle and use the parabolic curve. And you do biomechanics lecture, but an expert coach says, go higher, go faster, do it quieter, do it again, but look that way when you do it. So it's very simple, and you speak to what the rookie error, the hazard, and you keep it very simple. And running a class is like hosting a show. You've got to keep them engaged, you've got to keep them enthused, you've got to keep them motivated and encouraged. So all those street show and family entertainer craft, I put into my parkour class, and I keep everybody buzzed, keep them laughing, keep them encouraged. I make them support and nurture each other, or facilitate them being a group, because that's what we do as street entertainers. We make lots of individuals into a group. So I get lots of students that don't know each other, stand around in a circle. I make them a group. They want to come back because they want to be a group.
Okay, and how did you create it then? So you said you kept putting off creating it. You had to in the end because of COVID, because there's no shows. So how did you go about creating something like that?
Well, it started years ago when I first started teaching, but do you mean the new iteration of it?
Well, you can take it from years ago if you like.
Well, I've had help, basically, people offering their investment and their time, like Dave Pickens has helped doing with marketing material, taking photographs and editing them. My friend Jose is a musician. He's also a graphic designer. He's designed a logo for me. My friend Trevor's sponsored buying like branded logoed hoodies so the instructors can wear them. I've got trainee instructors that are at the moment donating their time for free, but they'll get paid as the membership subscriptions come in. At the moment, we've been giving a lot of free tasters, but people are coming back.
So how do you get the message out? How do you begin to get people to engage with the service?
like I said, I didn't have any capital, so I just advertised on Facebook on local community groups. So like Walthamstow Life, I Love Hackney, Stokey Folks, Hackney Wick Locals, and that's all free. You post that, and I've had inquiries from there.
Okay, cool. And you say that the project's picking up?
Yeah, like I said, we've gone from, you know, a couple of students a few weeks ago to now I'm fielding inquiries. Yeah, every day. I
Great.
got booking for got personal training family tomorrow, family of 5 tomorrow, and got another homeschooling family that are going to put me in touch with the whole homeschool network. So I'll be teaching families and kids who are allowed to be in a group. They're allowed to do sports activity outside. They're allowed to hire a private sports coach. So yeah, apart from the weather, it's all to play for.
Do you see yourself going back to doing shows after this?
Yeah, I want to. My vision is to sort of spend 5 years pushing this business so that, like, I just train the instructors and have them running various clubs, and then I can leave it and it's still generating a revenue for me. And then I go on a busking tour where I don't need to make money, but I can just choose. Like, I want to go to Slovakia and do shows there, but I don't need to think, oh, do I have to go where it's best to make money? I can just go. I
go
want
for the
to
joy.
do a show in. Yeah, I just want to go to Portugal and see what shows are like there. Yeah, see if I can learn my show in Portuguese. Yeah,
and we've been
visit Shandy.
So we've been talking for 1 hour and 55 minutes now. So we're reaching the last 5 minutes of the interview. Is there any stories that you haven't told that you want to tell? Is there any points you want to bring up that you haven't brought up so far?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to. Oh man,
if you need a little more time, we can go 5 or 10 minutes over if you want to finish a story you're telling.
Yeah, no, it's all kind of disjointed now. I made some notes, but yeah, it's always good to have a plan. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You've been arrested for street performing.
Yeah, a few times.
It's tradition amongst street performers to be competitive, like cock blocking and story topping. So I think we should end on an arrest story topping. So I've been arrested in more countries than you.
Okay.
I've been arrested in Italy, Switzerland, Japan, Belgium, and Australia for street performing.
Never in the UK.
How many?
I've been arrested in one country, but I've not been arrested that many times. I've actually been reasonably good. I've been arrested, I think, 2 or 3 times for busking in the UK.
Yeah. I was watching a video yesterday of that Nick Broad took, the kind of short documentary of Matt Bowden versus Westminster Council, and there was a very noticeable difference in your appearance between when you got found guilty and when you got found not guilty.
I had a shaved head. So
you think, why did you shave your head to go into court? You look like a skinhead.
This is the interesting thing about that, right? Is even though in the documentary you can see I'm quite emotional as losing in the magistrates' court, we always intended to lose in magistrates' court. The plan was to lose in the magistrates' court. There wasn't a huge amount of drive to win there, because if you win in magistrates' court, you gain very little. You in the British court system, there's descending precedent. And I'll cover this in a lot more detail in the interview I'm going to do for Christmas. I'm going to do an interview one of the later weeks in Christmas about all my political pitch battles with Security Council and businesses of different descriptions over the years. There's a lot of them. But for this one, we wanted to lose in magistrates to access the descending authority of courts. So the higher court you go to, the lower courts have to listen to that judgment when they're making future judgments. They don't have to abide by it, but they have to give it some thought. And so we wanted to lose in magistrates. But even though we wanted to lose, and I had my shaved head, and we weren't really going all guns out to win, I still shed a tear at the end of the day, because you get so emotionally caught up in it, and then the Crown Court one is the one where we did, we wanted to win potentially. If not, we wanted to go to High Court, and we did put investment into that. We started getting expert witnesses. We got our top barrister involved in our actual game plan barrister who'd been there from the beginning to win the case, and that's why I looked a lot more presentable. With this lovely mustache from Sporting Now, but with quite tidy hair and everything else for that case, which we did win, and which did for a long time change the way that Westminster dealt with performers in the borough.
It was a game changer.
Let's finish with something from you though. What do you want to say to performers, people who begin, who are going to have a life on street performance after you've had a very productive and diverse life in all these different countries performing?
Well, advice that I always give to sort of younger performers when they're starting, and it's the same for street or stage, is don't ask them to like you. Assume that they like you, assume that they love you, and let them know that you like them too. So, you're not asking for approval. You're not trying to pass a test that they're setting. You assume that you've passed the test. That's why they're stood watching you. That's why they haven't walked out. That's why they're not heckling you or they're listening. And just let them know gently, like, you're good, like, well done. You're a good audience, And if they're not that good, you say, okay, you guys need a bit of warming up, don't you? Okay, well, I can do that. I'm the right guy to warm you up. So let's warm you up. How about this? And if that gag goes flat, you go, okay, so you're not really into that kind of gag. Oh, well, we'll find your spot. So you're not passive. You're not saying, oh, I haven't yet met your approval. I'm sorry. That's a rookie street point error. Assume that they love you and let them know that you love them too.
So that's very sound advice. Last thing you want to say to your family? Many of your performing family have been watching today and have sent love and liked and been here through the interview. Many of them from start to finish. Is there anything you want to say to all of them?
I'm really apologise profusely for not name checking you. You know who you are, but there's too many to name check and not enough time. But if I haven't name checked you, I apologise profusely. But I love you, especially.
Okay, well, I think it's a nice end. AJ, thank you so much for your time. Everyone who's been watching, thank you for your time. Thank you for watching again. Thank you everybody who's supported Whining On so far. If you want to support the channel again, like, share, comment, subscribe. If you can and are able to during these strange times, go put a couple of quid a month into the Patreon. It'll help me a lot. We produce upwards of 8 videos that are 2 hours long every single month of living history. We are now, I think, one of the largest, most comprehensive living history archives of our art form. If you can spare a couple of quid, support it if you can. If you can't, as I said, just like, share, subscribe. From me, I'd like to say goodbye. AJ,
are our debts now clear? I don't owe you any money.
Nearly.
I did this.
Nearly.
Yeah,
nearly. I'm keeping a tally. I will see you very soon, my friend. Everybody, much love. Catch you soon. Look forward to seeing you all in real life. Goodbye, everybody.